We're punishing the 98% in order to reap reward upon reward on the 2%.
You should thrive based on what you offer consumers. So if you're offering a great product that people like, you should be successful. But what's happening is the government is perverting the way that that works by saying, we're going to step in and we're going to allow your competitor a huge advantage over you. So you could be offering everything that your consumers want and still go out of business because the government's subsidizing a bigger corporation. And that's not fair. That's not what we believe in.
IKEA is a very troubling example of corporate handouts where you have the government coming in and essentially trying to lure this specific business into an area to compete with others who don't get the same handouts. It's a very crystal clear example of the government picking winners and losers.
Corporate welfare is a problem. I mean, a certain amount of it's inevitable and maybe it's a little grease in the wheels, I don't know. But generally speaking, it poses a strong risk of corruption, and it means that companies are making decisions not based on what makes their goods and services better, their prices lower, their services more efficient, but rather on what they can extract from taxpayers.
Very few people see the real problem in this. They buy into the press release economics of it. They buy into the ribbon cuttings and the jobs that the government says it creates, and no one's really pushing back against it. No one is speaking up for the guy who didn't get the handouts, who's busted his butt day in and day out to create a good job for other people, and now all of a sudden he's subsidizing his competitor. Not only is this a problem economically, it's a perversion of the free enterprise system, but there are a lot of little guys who are getting left behind, who are getting overlooked, and no one's speaking up for them.
I'm Ron Becker. I'm the general manager of the Great American Home Store. We're located in Memphis, Tennessee and South Haven, Mississippi. I started working when I was 11 years old. I was taught by my grandmother that at the end of every day you ask yourself, do I owe my boss because I didn't give him a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, or does my boss owe me? And she said the right answer is, whoever you work for, they should owe you more because you gave them more than they expected. I'd been in the furniture business for 40 years, and I'd left the industry and gotten into real estate. And my current business partner contacted me one day about opening up a furniture store in Memphis. So that's how it all got started. And living in Memphis all my life, you hear about tax incentives and tax abatements that are given to companies that are going to do a startup. And so we didn't want to not go through that process and leave something on the table that might help us financially in the startup phases of what we were planning. But as I approached the chamber in the city, I was told politely but very quickly that there was just no such programs for retail.
One of the things you find with corporate welfare is that it's not usually evenly available. Usually the political class gets excited about something and they decide they want a particular kind of business, and they target subsidies to reward those. It may just be a fad among the governing classes, which is very often the case. Yet the money goes out.
Over the past decade alone, Tennessee has spent over $3 billion on corporate handouts. Very few companies have gotten these handouts. They create far fewer jobs than the vast majority of companies that are raised here, grown in our state. They're not getting those $3 billion. These very select few companies are.
Here's the problem as being a small business owner in the state of Tennessee. They don't give businesses money that needs money. They give businesses money that don't need money. My name is Louis Cadell, owner of King's Furniture, Memphis, Tennessee. As a child, I've always thought of myself as an entrepreneur, running errands for the neighborhood, elderly, cutting grass, shoveling snow, raking leaves. I started considering opening a business after I got laid off during the recession of 2008. I had read an article in the Memphis Business Journal about a young man that had bought a mattress, brand new, and he listed his old mattress on Craigslist. And so he went into the mattress business. And I was like, bingo, I can do the same. So I did some research, found some manufacturers that were somewhat local, and it just grew. I put in a lot of work. I worked extremely long hours, just reinvesting basically every dollar. It caused me to have rapid growth. And I went from selling mattresses out of a storage facility to opening up my first furniture store in Horn Lake, Mississippi, which I still have, King's Furniture.
For the first year and a half, we kept looking for a location in the Memphis market, but we couldn't find the property that was suited at the price that we could afford to pay, but we were able to do that in Mississippi. So we opened the first store there in September of 2004. 4 years later, when we come to Memphis, we struggle trying to work with the politicians and the political process of getting things done. It was just a whole different scenario.
The city of Memphis tax rate, just the sales tax rate alone, is 9.25 in the county of Shelby. You have payroll taxes, and then you have hidden taxes that the population don't understand takes away the majority of their income. You have fuel taxes, gasoline taxes, you have energy taxes, utility bills, you have water taxes. So every time you spend $1, 60% of it is going out in taxes. It's like working poor.
The government is admitting that our tax policy is so bad that we have to essentially give one company a handout in order to come here.
In a free market, consumers reward people who produce a better product at less cost by buying that, and that encourages people to do a better job. And over time, the result is everybody gets richer and better off. When the government pays people to do things, that doesn't happen. It's not a signal from the marketplace. It, in fact, rewards companies that spend more money on lobbying. And for companies, that's a no-brainer, because an investment of $100,000 in lobbyists in a state capital can easily return you tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in benefits. So the return on that investment is colossal. But what it's not is a free market.
The greater Memphis, Shelby County metropolitan area was actually one of the smallest markets that we had considered, and this is a tight market for us numbers-wise. We explain this to the public officials, and we say, we'd love to come here. We think we've identified the site. The numbers are a bit iffy. In order to make that happen, we probably need to participate in some sort of economic development partnership. The program existed. There were clear criteria. We submitted our application, and we got approved. If the opportunity did not exist for us, the project may not have happened.
It's somewhat challenging and disheartening when one company can come in and they get, first and foremost, all the free publicity. It was on the news channels, on the TV, it was on the radio, it was news article after news article about IKEA coming to Memphis and how great it was going to be. I didn't see any of that when we opened our store. And then here I am, spent 40 years of my life in this market, employed as many as 250 people. We currently employ over 100 people. They're not doing anything different than the people that have been here all of our lives have been doing. That is bothersome to me.
They should not be paid any of the citizens' tax dollars. That's very unfair to the businesses that don't get any tax breaks. I'd rather Memphis repair the streets, the potholes, and infrastructure and things of that nature, increase the police force. I also create jobs. I have employees too. You can be a successful company and not have to depend on the government.
The current deal for IKEA is roughly $10 million that's being handed out by the local government in Memphis. Of course, that could go up over time because, as we've seen with a lot of these corporate welfare deals, once a company's in, then they have a lot of leverage to blackmail those local governments or state government to pony up even more money to get them to stay. Not too long ago, Volkswagen did this same thing. They ultimately were already located in Chattanooga, and they threatened to not expand in Chattanooga and expand instead in Mexico if they didn't get even more handouts. Now, as state taxpayers, we're up to over $800 million in handouts to one company, to Volkswagen, both to lure the company here in the first place and then to get it to stay here and expand jobs here rather than elsewhere.
You do see that sort of thing happen, and the problem there is that's a great deal for big businesses that have a lot of clout. They can threaten to leave the state, and people will bend over backwards to try to keep them. But what about all the other businesses that aren't big enough to do that? If you've got 25 employees and you threaten to leave the state, they'll basically just tell you goodbye. And yet, there are a lot more businesses with 25 employees out there, and they need a good business climate too.
You can't really blame businesses for taking these handouts. I mean, in reality, if it's going to save you money or cost you less to start your business, then you're going to want to grasp that and take what you can. What we should be doing is blaming the politicians who are doling out the money.
Politicians are in the business of trading favors and buying votes. That's what they do. And it's not always bad, but whenever you give them power to do something, that power will always be exercised politically, and it will always be exercised in a way that rewards their friends and punishes their enemies.
Ultimately, their incentives to get good press, their incentives to get reelected, and to raise money. And one of the problems is that giving these corporate handouts allows them to do all these things.
The companies will ask for this money, then they'll get it, and then the government will feel it necessary to defend its position for giving that money. So not only do they give handouts, but they will go throw big parties, and they'll get a lot of press attention to show how great this is, all the while the competitors of those companies are creating jobs, they're paying taxes, they're good corporate citizens for decades and decades, and they get none of that benefit. And the problem is that there's very little accountability. There are many examples of companies getting money to create X number of jobs and then either never creating those jobs or starting to lay people off once they've gotten the money.
First on Fox tonight, millions of your tax dollars spent on land and tax breaks to lure a big company to Clarksville.
And in return, Hemlock Semiconductor promised hundreds of good-paying jobs and a booming business.
The sales tax generated by the construction of this facility alone will more than pay for the incentives that were reached with Hemlock Semiconductor.
So far, only phase one of that Hemlock plant has been completed, and hundreds of workers were laid off soon after being hired. And so far, the plant hasn't manufactured much of anything.
There's a huge concern right now for the people who will be losing their jobs. I mean, this is happening right before the holidays. Talking about this, Clarksville's mayor had this to say about the plant closing.
Politicians would rather remain in power in a state that's doing badly economically than be out of power in a state that's doing well. So as long as corporate welfare and such protect their political position, they don't really care if it causes a lot of people to do badly and to leave the state.
This is the perfect example of that sort of economic seen and unseen. We can see the job creation, we can see the ribbon cutting ceremonies, we can see the press releases about how we created all these jobs, but we don't see the money that we've taken from that other person, from that other furniture store owner, from that other taxpayer, and just to say that they could have done something else with it. They could have saved more for their kids' college. They could have bought a new car to get to work. They could have hired somebody else. Is a lot harder to get people to understand than the job that was created, than the ribbon that was cut, than the press release that did go out.
If I could get tax breaks or assistance, that would give me the opportunity to invest the capital that I already have. As long as my money can work without having to give it all back to the government, I could grow my company. I would have more discretionary income to be able to assist my family in their needs. They don't give tax breaks to small companies.
There's a lot of good intentioned people who say, you know what, we want jobs. We think a furniture store would be great in Memphis. This big multinational corporation would be great in Memphis. But this is the part where we disagree, because IKEA is an example when good intentions go bad. Yes, they want to bring jobs, but they're doing it at the expense of businesses who have been there, have been pillars of the community in Memphis, who have paid their taxes, done everything they're supposed to do. And then at the same time, they're saying, you know what, we're going to give your money that you pay in taxes to your competitor to help put you out of business. Does that seem fair to you?
Let me say this first and foremost. I don't wish bad business on anybody, so I hope that they're successful in this Memphis market. So I wish them well and welcome to the community. But it was somewhat annoying that a furniture company comes into the Memphis market and gets that kind of tax abatement within a few years from the time that we opened our store. Yeah, bothersome.
I'm okay with IKEA coming to Memphis. It's just another degree of competition. It's just that when a corporation has all this money flowing in and it came from the taxpayers, then yeah, that's kind of like, wow, unfair.
The reality is 98% of the jobs created here in Tennessee are created by existing homegrown Tennessee businesses. Yet we give almost all of the handouts to the other 2%. So for us, that's really the problem. We're punishing the 98% in order to reap reward upon reward on the 2%.
You know, we opened our business in 2004, and with the exceptions of death, our management staff is the same today as it was when we opened our doors. And many of these employees worked with me in a previous life. Some of them have been a part of my life for the last 40 years. I want to take care of all my employees so they can take care of their families and set a good example in the neighborhood. As many hours a day that we work together, as many years have we been together, well, we owe it to each other. As you get older and you've worked in the community all your life, and many, many people are doing great things in this community when it comes to helping one another with nothing at all. They have no money, no structure, but yet they try to give back. So that is our number one goal, to be successful so that we can make this a better place to work and to live for every citizen.
We believe every Tennessean deserves an equal opportunity. The corporations who get the money have lobbyists, they have the media, they have a lot of people to help them, but there's nobody to help the little guy. And that's why Beacon's here. We need a government that cares about all businesses and not just padding the pockets of big corporations.
Ideally, what you'd like to see is, instead of states trying to buy businesses with taxpayer money, you'd like to see states trying to improve their own business friendliness and make themselves a good place to do business, whether or not you're getting subsidies from the taxpayers. If a bunch of states agreed to do that and all work together, I think the country as a whole would be richer and better off, and so would all the people who lived in those states.
Government should be creating a level playing field. Government should be the umpire in baseball who calls the balls and strikes from a neutral standpoint, so that the homegrown business that's been here for generations is treated equally to the new fancy corporation that wants to come in and set up shop.
Maybe if the word is spread far enough, it'll make a difference where we can have a voice in the legislature, some people that'll actually stand up and vote against giving away our dollars.
I've been working in this market all my life. It's a great place. We're warm, we're friendly. This is a giving community, a charitable community, and I'm proud to be a part of it. We could have done this in another city. We could have done this in Nashville. We could have done it in Knoxville. We could have done it in Jackson, Mississippi. But I wanted to do it right here in my hometown.